Hi, Andre. How are you?
I'm doing well. And you?
Good. All right. Thank you for agreeing to answer some of the questions
Mhm.
for my class. So, okay. So you were my former student, so I guess just want to uh, let everyone know that. It's good to see you. Okay. So my first question to you is, how would you describe yourself to someone who perhaps have never met you before? How would you
Um,
describe yourself?
I would describe myself by saying, hi, my name is Gaio Junior Andre. I'm a human being from planet Earth, and I'm a first generation immigrant from the nation of Haiti.
Very good. Very, very interesting introduction. Okay, that's good. So it's interesting you mentioned that you're from Haiti as you're introducing, I guess, introducing yourself. And one of the things that in my class, my students learning is that our culture can be a very strong, can influence the way we define ourselves. And so particularly for people who are maybe immigrants. And so it's interesting that you did mention that you're from Haiti in your, I guess, description of yourself. So that's interesting. So, so you're from Haiti, you just mentioned. Anything else you want to, when did you move to US from Haiti? If
Oh,
you,
well, I was going to say that ties into the next question that you're going to
right,
ask
that's
me.
right. Where
Yeah.
give me a little bit of just a little bit of your background, where you, I guess we know that you're from Haiti, but what else you can tell us about yourself?
I could also tell you that where I grew up, I was born in the capital, Port-au-Prince, Haiti. For the first 7 years of my life, I grew up in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. For the next year, I migrated to the United States and stayed in Miami. From 2006 to 2016, I grew up in a small town called Palm Bay, Florida. Yes.
And now you're here in Gainesville.
Oh, absolutely.
So good. Okay. I'm glad you're in Gainesville now.
Hmm.
Um, so your family is mostly now in US, right?
Oh, yes.
And you still have some family members in Haiti.
Absolutely. And they're the ones who have visas. So if they want to come, they choose to whenever they want to. So I'm like, all right, cool.
So you still have connection, strong connection to Haiti.
Absolutely.
So another thing that I wanted to ask you is about this, the concept of acculturation. It's something, again, my students are learning in my developmental psychology class. So the acculturation is this, the idea of acculturation is the changes and adjustments that a person has to make once they move to a new country or culture for a sustained period of time. So the question that I wanted to ask you is, what was the process like for you to move, uh, when you move from Haiti to US, and how do you, what is your identification with, how do you identify yourself, or do you continue to identify yourself with Haiti, or as an, you consider yourself as American, or both? What would be your, I guess, attitude towards the two cultures?
Good question. Good question. So if I remember correctly, acculturation is defined as a process of assimilation to a different culture, typically the dominant one. To
So
answer
not
that
just
question,
assimilation. So assimilation is one of those things, but yeah, changes, assimilation could happen in the process, but there
mhm.
could be integration is another concept that, but anyway, but the point is, I don't want you to focus on the terminology, just what's your, I guess, experiences in terms of what changes that has occurred to you as, have you be, how to identify yourself as more American or Haitian or both, or what is that for you?
Well, at first, I was very curious and interested in new surroundings and appreciation of the opportunities to be found in the American culture. Afterwards, I experienced culture shock. I was unsure how to interact with people, how to make friends with people from different cultures. My self-identity was in shambles. It was difficult understanding and expressing myself in my usual way. Food and eating customs here are different. Experiencing prejudice and stereotype, became accustomed with the concept of racism, because that was something that was just like not at all found in my country. Feeling of loneliness, angry, helplessness. But after a while, I learned how to adapt, and all these feelings became normal. To answer your question, I still identify myself with my Haitian culture than the American culture.
So more strongly, you think of yourself in your cultural Haitian roots,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. When it comes to me and my family, they're always says, and even the ones that are born here after we migrated, they always say, "Hey, look, remember, we're Haitians," and they're just like, "But like we're born here." I was just like, "No, no, 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 we're Haitians. Me and you, we're Haitians right here. So don't ever forget that."
So that your parents, or like your mom would, your aunts would.
Everyone. It's unanimous decision. It's to the point where even the ones that are born here, they're just like, American, what? No, man, sure, because they themselves are realizing there's a big culture change when they step foot outside their household, and when they're just going to school, and then when they come back in the household, they're like, nah, we don't do the same thing here. Good to know. Sure.
Interesting. So but you've made, if you think about your friends, for example, they're not only Haitian, right?
Mm-mm.
So you have friends of Americans, friends, and all kinds of different friends, right?
Yes, I have acclimated to it. That's why I said it's just like I don't believe I've ever assimilated to the American culture for acclimation. Yes, I've made friends with Americans, multicultural students with different backgrounds that are Americans or immigrants. Yeah, I have.
Okay, that's um okay, that's interesting. So trying to think. Okay, so so you said that it was a difficult process, and actually it's not surprising, because again, I guess our textbook is correct to point out the fact that this process of acculturation can be particularly difficult for minority, racial and ethnic minority groups. So I guess you were, I guess your experiences kind of support that.
Well, I would say this. So where I grew up in the nation that I'm from, we don't have this concept of minority. We never had this concept of racism, of discrimination, a stereotype.
So this
Coming
is something
here,
new.
yeah, that was something 100% new when I came here, and it was just like, oh, you're a minority race. I was like, huh? Oh, what does that mean? Oh, we don't have any Black leaders here. Really? You sure about that? So it was kind of like very hard. It's just like, oh, you have lack of resources. I was just like, okay, what else is new?
So I guess, right, I can see by default you became a minority, whereas in your home country there was no such thing. So I definitely, it's a strange thing to think of yourself. Yeah. How old were you when you moved to US?
I was 7 years old, so just enough where it was just like, hey, you already went to some of the preschools and you're just entering the elementary school system of Haiti, and you know enough about your country, but it's like, oh, now you have to move to a whole completely different culture.
Yeah. And just to kind of be clear, you were already speaking English, right? Or were you not speaking English?
Oh, I was not speaking English whatsoever. It was dreadful. I would say that at the very least, because by that time in Haitian school, you have to know French and Creole. And when coming here, it was like my family's looking at the surroundings. I was like, well, this sucks. And it was just like, so we have to lose a language because it's either we're going to lose French or Creole. And then we're looking at ourselves in Miami, which is like, one of the capital cities where Haitian immigrants would come and migrate. It was like, so we're talking to the other Haitians that says they don't speak French. And in this country, it's almost a dead tongue. So we're not going to need to know it. But to connect with our community, we're going to need to keep knowing Creole, and we're going to have to learn English. So in our household, we're not gonna continue enforcing French. We're gonna continue enforcing Creole and learn English. So it became a dead tongue really fast in our household as well.
Oh, that's interesting. So you had to learn English, and your parents, your mom had to learn obviously English too. So right now, when you go see your mom, for example, what language do you speak to each other?
Creole.
Okay. Well, you did.
100%. Well,
And you
no, we're
still,
not allowed to say any English words in that household. It's just like, you better remember your language. Like, come on now.
well, that's good. I'm glad you didn't forget your, and you still speak French, right?
No, we just understand it.
Oh, okay. So you kind of lost a little bit of French.
Absolutely.
That's too bad, but at least you have your.
It was out of necessity, and if the language isn't reinforced, we notice it was
Right.
just like, so we're just like, we're blessed to have two languages, but we can only keep one. So which one are we
That's
gonna
right.
pick?
So you're still bilingual. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's one more question I wanted to ask. I guess this was again in my textbook. This idea of code switching was brought up. It's the idea that sometimes people of multicultural backgrounds may switch the way they talk or even the way they behave if they talk to different cultural groups of people. So when they're around their own like native or people of their culture, they maybe behave or talk differently, and then when they around people of a different culture, they may actually adjust to that culture as well. So they kind of maintain two different almost behavioral and linguistic styles of communication. I don't know. Do you ever, can you relate to that, or?
100% every single day.
So can you describe a little bit what that means?
It's more, it at times it could be tiring, but at the same time it could be fun. It's like putting a mask on and, as you say, code switching. So it's just like, all right, this is good for outside temperature if it's raining, but it's just like, all right, I need like a sweater inside. So because it's just, warmer. So I would say in public life, I'm more professional and I articulate like higher language of speaking in English, and I'm more just like secluded to myself, just 1, 2, 3, all right, understanding it and show almost little to no emotions. And in my household, it's like turning up the radio volume up to full blast. So, which is very interesting because and outside from the Americans' perspective and from the outside, they're thinking my radio volume is at full blast. And I have to constantly remind them, no, it's not. At the very best, you're getting 20%. And in my household, it's 100% because we have to invoke like more emotions and we're just more accustomed with each other. And as I said, there's no language difficulty. So we understand each other more and we're just like more, we just feel comfortable around each other. So we would talk, say, and like do hand gestures and be closer with each other than Americans' culture.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, well, that was interesting. Thank you, Andre.
You're welcome.
And it was good to see you. Thanks
You too.
again. Take care.
Bye.
Hold on.